Hello and welcome to the UK Cloud tutorial on how to export the metrics out of vCloud Director and put them into something useful like Kibana, Elasticsearch and Logstash Stack, also known as the ELK Stack. And how we're going to do that is by using our repository that we have here at UK Cloud vCloud metrics, which you can have access to all the code at github.com/ukcloud/vCloud metrics. And what we have here is a microservice which consumes the data provided from the vCloud metrics and puts them into Logstash and subsequently puts them into Kibana to have a nice visualization like such. So how does it work? Well, if we just go back to basics, recently in UK Cloud's regions 5 and 6, we're now exposing the VM utilization via an API endpoint, which is something like that. Now, the negative is that it's per VM. So what you have to do, you call the URL for your VM, and it'll give you the metrics. It'll say the CPU usage, the CPU usage maxigem, the average, and things like that, how much disks used. Basically, it reports this data. Now, for that to be useful for what we'd like to do, we have created a microservice which simply returns some JSON that looks like this. And the way that works is you pass in a JSON string containing the API URL, your username and password, and then what you do with that is curl that or basically post that to the vCloud metrics URL, and it will return a nice JSON blob of all your servers and all their metrics. And then you can use this in a tool such as the ELK Stack, which is exactly what we're going to do now. So how do we run the microservice? Well, the microservice is something that was written by one of my colleagues, and it's written in Ruby's Sinatra framework and Rack. And you can basically run that on as a local service on your own computer, and you can do it all manually. You can check it out, and you can do a bundle install, etc. But we've actually got all this ready to roll in a containerized environment using OpenShift origin. And now that makes things a lot easier for us because we have a simple set of commands that I can run through and show you how to have this up and running, and I'm going to show you this running in real time. So to get things started, what I'm going to suggest that you do is, if you want to do this yourself, you will need to get a hold of OpenShift origin on your computer. You can get that from here, which is github.com/OpenShift/origin. If you head to releases, you can download the source of the latest version here. And I'm also running Docker for Mac. I'm running the latest version. So if we just look at my terminal, what I shall do, if I just move my terminal up a little bit. Okay, so basically if I docker -v, you can see I'm running 17.03, which is the latest community edition release. And I'm also running a 1.50 of OpenStack Origin. Now to get started, it's a simple case of OC cluster up, and what that'll do, that'll bring up an OpenShift instance connected to my local Docker on localhost, because we're using the native mount of Docker on local machine, and that'll set up in just a matter of seconds. And once this is set up, it will give us a URL and a username and password. So if you've not used OpenShift before, this will be new to you. So 127.0.0.1 localhost, that's because it's using the local Docker machine native to Mac. If I head over to Google Chrome and open it here, I'll log in, developer, and as you can see, we've got nothing in there. It's just my project. This is just the dummy project that it creates when you fire up OpenShift origin for the first time. And if I just show you what's in Docker now, Docker PS, it's got all these OpenShift origin stuff, because obviously the whole point of OpenShift, it being a PaaS, you don't really need to worry about what containers are running, but I was just showing you out of interest so you can see what is running. So now we've run OC cluster up, what we actually want to do is create our new app as per our instructions here. OC new project vCloud. So we're going to create a new, this is going to be a project to host all of our services. We're going to create a metrics service, which is going to be responsible for our microservice that will ultimately call the vCloud metrics API, and it will return the JSON blob of all our servers. So what I'll do, I'll just create our new app, put that in there, new project, sorry, and then it's there instantly. I don't have to go refreshing or anything because OpenShift is cool. And then new app. So this app, we're creating an app called Metrics. I'm specifying that it should look at the source and determine what container to deploy. Because OpenShift is very clever, it determines based on the source code what container you require. So if I'm just going to do this, it's determined that the code is Ruby, and it's going to put a Ruby container on there. So what that's done, that's created a metrics service. So if I head over to OpenShift and I go in vCloud, you can see straight away it's created on overview, it's created a metrics service, and that's currently deploying. So we'll just leave that to it. And whilst that's doing that, we'll have a look at what our next step is. The next step is to expose that service. The reason we want to expose that service is because obviously we want to get the JSON blob, so it needs to be publicly accessible. So we need to go and do expose service metrics, which in turn gives the metrics service a publicly accessible URL. Obviously this is just on my Mac for now because it's just for demo purposes, but as you can see, it's already finished firing up that container. If I look in the metrics, you can see it's created a service on port 8080 with a host name. It's got one container out of one, and it's only a few seconds old, and it's ready for receiving traffic, and that's what pod it's on. Obviously OpenShift is actually using Kubernetes underneath it to orchestrate all the deployment of these containers. So if I just come back here, we can see the metric service is running. So our next step is we don't need to OC status because we just looked in the GUI. That will just show that our service is running. So now what we need to do, we've got our actual microservice working, but what we need to do now is create the ELK stack, so Kibana and Elasticsearch, and we'll come to Logstash very shortly. So let's just fire up Kibana. We're using a third-party container for Kibana, no point reinventing the wheel on that one. Kibana created, there we go, Kibana up and running, or deploying, sorry, and also a new app, Elasticsearch. So let's create Elasticsearch. And now head back here, Elasticsearch coming up. Kibana's up and running already, and so is Elasticsearch currently deploying. But Kibana, we need to be accessible because we want to be able to view our dashboards and things. So we're going to have to do OC expose Kibana as well. As you can see here, OC expose service Kibana. OC expose service. If I come back, it's got a publicly accessible URL, so we can go there and Kibana will load up. What you will see in this is that we now have Elasticsearch, Kibana, and our metric service. The next step is to actually have Logstash. Logstash is going to be responsible for calling our microservice, which will in turn call the vCloud metrics API and return that JSON blob. And Logstash will populate Elasticsearch, and Kibana will use Elasticsearch to visualize that data. So what we need to do now is take our vCloud direct credentials, put them in a vcloud.creds.txt file, and then execute, create a new app using the Logstash container, put this code on there, which is our vCloud metrics Git repository, and it's going to put it in the logstash folder. And that's because what we have here, we have up here in our Git repository a logstash folder, which has got some scripts which are going to be responsible for polling the microservice that we've created. Poll metrics.sh. So as you can see, this is some logstash configuration to ask it to call the metrics API. As you can see there, it's going to call the URL. It's going to pass in the correct information. These are environment variables that are set within the OpenShift service, and it's going to call the vCloud stats API. So what I now need to do is just come back here and put my credentials in credits.txt. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go and put my credentials in the credits.txt and then execute this command. Okay, so what I've done, I've put my credentials in creds.txt, and now I'm just going to call this command, OC new app, but actually I didn't call it vCloud creds because I like to be difficult, creds.txt. So this will create our logstash implementation. It'll put our custom configuration in the logstash folder, and it's going to populate it with creds.txt so that logstash knows our vCloud credentials, so that it in turn can call our vCloud metrics endpoint and grab that JSON. So I shall just create that, and now if I head back to OpenShift, we can see logstash is currently deploying. There we go. That's pending. So this is running. So whilst that's just firing up, what I will do is open Kibana. If we come here, Kibana is loading. So this is Kibana, and we need to create an index pattern. Right now we don't actually have any data in here because our logstash build has not yet started sending any information. So what we need to do is just head back here and see where that's got to. So that's currently got one pod. It's currently just processing. So once that's set up, it's going to pull the metrics endpoint every minute and start populating Kibana. So what we need to do is just have a recap. So we have Elasticsearch, we've got Kibana, we've got Logstash, we've got an ELK stack basically, and we have our metrics microservice. Logstash is going to be polling our metrics microservice, and it's going to populate Elasticsearch, which in turn will be visualized by Kibana. Let's see if we've got any data in Kibana yet. Might be a bit too soon. No, it looks like we've got some data in there. So what we can do now is create the index and head to discover. And as you can see, we've already started grabbing some information. This was 1428. Obviously, this is real time. It's got the percentage, memory usage, disk write average. It's already grabbing all this information, and it's pushing this into Kibana, which is amazing. Now, obviously, it would be very good if I then went through and I started filtering all this information and made this graph look pretty. It would take a long time to create that dashboard. So what you can actually do in Kibana is export previously built dashboards. And what I can do, I will do that right now, and I'm going to load the one that I loaded earlier. So I'm going to do load save dashboard, manage dashboards, import, and you can import this yourself. It's in vCloud metrics, Kibana, vCloud dashboard. So this has got all the configuration for parsing this data. vCloud metrics has now been imported. So if I have a look at that. So if I just go back to dashboards and now load save dashboard, it'll be here. Load this one. There we go. There we have the memory usage, the CPU usage, disk reads, disk writes. This data is coming in. As you can see, this is literally only just started collecting data. It's now collecting it every minute, and that is all using the vCloud Metrics API. It's using UK Cloud's microservice, which is polling the data every minute. It's using Logstash. So Logstash is the one responsible for the polling, I should say. Logstash is calling the metrics microservice every minute, which in turn calls the vCloud Metrics API. And that is then being pushed into Elasticsearch, and Kibana is using the Elasticsearch data to visualize all our servers. Now, I could leave this running a bit longer for the purposes of the video, but I think in terms of you guys wanting to get started and doing this yourself, the best thing you can do is head over to UK Cloud GitHub, which is UK Cloud vCloud Metrics, or github.com/UKCloud/vCloud Metrics. All the information that you need is in here. It explains it in probably far more detail than I possibly can in this quick video. You've got all the information on here, how it works, with all the JSON being posted to the vCloud Metrics URL, the JSON that's returned, the microservice that's written in Ruby, how it all works. Obviously, I've just run through how it works in OpenShift in containers managed by Kubernetes, how it's all pushed into Elasticsearch, and along with the vCloud credentials. It is really easy to get this up and running. Obviously, I'm using a Mac. I'm using one of the latest versions of Docker and the latest version of OpenStack Origin. If you have a bunch of vCloud machines in vCloud Director, I strongly suggest that you go and do this so you can monitor your servers, because it is literally amazing. I'm just going to give that a quick refresh because I didn't set the refresh interval on that, so actually it's not coming through as quick as it should. So there you go. You can see this happening already. It just so happens that personally I don't really have much in vCloud, so as you can see I've only really got 2 servers. But if you've got upwards of 10 servers, hundreds, thousands of servers, you'll start to have some seriously impressive usage information here. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you.